Good morning and assalamu alaikum to all viewers. Thank you again for joining me today. I do hope you are keeping safe and well. Welcome to episode 4, where we're going to chat about the post-COVID future of organizations from an orgtology perspective. So 2020 has been a hectic year for many of us. The COVID-19 pandemic is threatening the world's economic order, causing havoc in industries such as real estate, hospitality, retail, transportation, tourism, educational services, just to name a few. So many of these casualties of this unprecedented disruption are your famous and beloved companies that are closely associated with the communities they serve. Some of these businesses have decided to close for good, unfortunately, and undergo liquidation processes, selling off their assets for as much as cash as they could get. Others have filed for court protection against creditors to give them ample time to work out a get-well plan. Now, beyond the virus outbreak has also affected many other areas, like how we socialize, for example. Survival is especially challenging in retail and food and beverage, where safe distancing measures inevitably result in a plunge in footfall. Rental, manpower cost also remain a difficulty for many operators, as even rebates from the government may not be enough relief to tide them through this unprecedented time. If you're like me, I wasn't privileged to get a feel of any of the government subsidizers, fortunately. Just a few months of COVID, we've seen so many closures, which is very sad. So, however, with all these cares, all these negative talks that we hear on a daily basis, on the other story, we've got a lot of other companies that we see thrive during this pandemic. Few are our usual known giants of Amazon, Zoom, Cisco, WebEx, all these cybersecurity companies, and a couple of fresh startups too. So today, I have the honor to ask Derek, a Master Orgtologist, who will share his perspective on this pandemic. Derek's actually an old friend of mine. I've known him for more than a decade now. He's one of my favorite gurus for my clients back in 2011, 2002, 2015 in the Middle East and Africa market. I remember making him work for almost every single day of the month until he tells me, Sarah, please give me a break here. I'm tired. So the ratings actually we got from Derek's trainings are really 10 out of 10 most of the time. He has got good feng shui, the way I look at it. So on a professional level, Derek Hendrikz is the founder of the International Orgtology Institute, also known as IOI, where it's a non-profit organization who regulates the practice of orgtology and is an ongoing research center on scientific methods to work with the systems and dynamics within organizations. As a result, Derek was the first registered orgtologist and the first person to permanently practice in the field of orgtology. Currently, IOI trains people from all across the world to practice in orgtology. Derek himself has 25 years of training and consulting experience. He has worked with 200 over companies in 27 countries worldwide, specializing in development of executives, the board members, the EXCO teams, and the senior managers. Over the past 3 decades, Derek has created various international events. Some of these were the Robben Island Diversity Experience, the National Diversity Indaba, the Batho Pele Indaba, and South Africa's Top Gurus. And he very regularly appears on television and radio talk shows as a Quest member. So welcome, Derek. How's it going for you?
Hi, Sarah. Thank you. It's good to see you again and to talk to you again. It's we've come a long way. I remember with the Marcus Evans days, all the training we did worldwide. It was the good old days when we could still get onto planes and travel. It was nice.
Those times were beautiful.
Yeah, it was good times.
Yes, it's great to see you again, Derek. So, yes. So my first question to you, Derek, would be if you can share with our viewers today on what is orgtology. A lot of us are not very familiar with the term orgtology. So if you can explain to us what it means. think.
All right, Sarah, the word orgtology, the word org stands for organization, and tology, the Greek word logy. So translated, it would mean the science of organization. So orgtology is a scientific way to try and understand organizations. It's also a bit different to other consulting, that the organization is our client, you know, not necessarily the people in the organization. So we try and look at there's many people looking after people. So we look at the health of organizations. Orgtology is a bit different to traditional approaches to organizational development and design and strategy, in that it works with a duality, not with linear thinking. And that's one of the problems I had when I began orgtology with the typical MBA business school. I've been through that. And, you know, there's no person with an MBA that has an answer to this pandemic at this point. So one of the flaws in the traditional thinking of business is really the linear thinking. You know, if you go to a business school and you ask the difference between a mission and a vision, people would tell you that vision is where we want to go and mission is how we get there. That's a linear approach. In other words, it's from this to that, or this is better than that, or, you know, this is more than that. So it's either or from this to that, or, you know, even if you look at process management, they would talk about inputs, process, and outputs. So it's a linear approach. Orgtology works more from a dual approach. So duality is very important in orgtology, coexistence of projective and receptive elements. For instance, that same statement of the mission vision in orgtology, we would rephrase it by saying, purpose is who you are and intent is what you want to do with that. And in that we create a duality, a coexistence between something that creates the future and something that repeats the past. You know, I could talk about this for quite some time, but it has a good practical application. For instance, if you work with strategy, we would see operations as the one side of the duality. It's the thing that must help the organization to perform, and we would see strategy as that which we do to change the organization, which is the disruptive part, the introduction of chaos. So it works quite well. I've worked with a number of companies before COVID, and you know, my experience is that they are continuing through this crisis much easier than other organizations are. It's much easier for organizations who work on orgtology model to work remotely, for instance, because they're driven by purpose, not by an organigram. But yeah, I'm going to stop there for now. You know, I think we've got limited time here.
It's fine. It's fine. Before we get to the next question, just a quick when did you come out with the idea of this IOI, orgtology?
It's quite recent.
Yeah,
it's quite recent, Sarah. The term orgtology was coined and registered as a trademark in 2018, late in 2018. So it's quite recent. You know, we've also got the orgtology program running now for people worldwide to become orgtologists. But that only started last year, late last year. I would say last year, August about. Mm-hmm. So it's quite recent. But the concept, I've been working on that for about 20 years. Mm. So you know, already in the year 2000, I began experimenting with duality models in strategy and organizational design and leadership and that type of thing. So, you know, the concept has been growing for more than 2 decades, but the word orgtology and the institute and these things, they're quite recent. This is about 2 years now, if so much.
Great stuff. Okay. So tell me, Derek, how will COVID-19 impact organizations from an orgtology perspective?
Well, I think to understand this, one should first maybe look at an overall perspective, you know, not necessarily orgtology perspective. We can get to that, but I do believe that people are only beginning to experience the effect of COVID-19. I think the worst is to come. People are so focused on the actual infection at this stage, you know, about not being infected. So at this stage, the talk is about wearing masks and washing your hands and, you know, not touching your face, you know, those type of things, so that we can flatten the curve and, you know, so forth. But it seems like a virus that keeps on infecting. It brings a myriad of medical problems. For instance, let's say there's a vaccine that comes out in October. Has anybody sat and thought what it would take to vaccinate 7 billion people? Now, I don't think most people have a concept of what a billion is. And to put that in perspective, if you start counting today, it would take you 33 years to count to 1 billion without sleeping. If you count 1, 2, 3, 4, every second you count 1, it would take you 33 years. That's how much a billion is. So to vaccinate 7 billion people, I don't think the planet has enough glass for the amplitudes. There's not enough material to make syringes. So even if you combine the capacity of all the pharmaceuticals at this point, it would probably take about 3-4 years to get everybody vaccinated. So medically, this poses a problem. And I think that's the problem that we're consumed in at this point. But there's a bigger problem beyond that. I mean, there's an economic problem that's starting to escalate at this point. You have a worldwide lockdown. Most businesses can't sustain that. I think there's less than 10% of businesses internationally that can sustain a 3-4 to 6 month period without income. Most businesses will go down when they can't open. I mean, in South Africa, the gyms can't open, the restaurants can't open. Most of these won't be able to resuscitate when the time comes. That's the one thing. So the economy is going to be severely damaged through COVID-19. That's the one thing. The other thing is that psychologically, in the back of every human's mind is the idea that the next virus could only be a few seconds away. We've been shaken with this. We always thought we're in charge. Now we're seeing that even politicians can't solve this. It's out of our hands. So these are the things. But there's a bigger thing lurking beyond this, and that's what few people see, is the reality of a fourth industrial revolution. This COVID-19 is expediting that process. So the whole idea of cyber physical systems doing what humans would do on a process level would now be driven into that world. I mean, it would just make sense to have robots in a factory than to have people, because if there's a pandemic like this, the factory would continue. I mean, the only thing that we can't do, we can't get close to other people. Other than that, we're quite, we're free to do whatever. So cyber physical systems, cyber intelligence, we're seeing that now. The companies making money at this point are basically Zoom and Microsoft and Facebook and Monday.com, everything that's not physical at this stage, which can still connect people and help them to work. That's the big thing. And then lastly, I would say, overriding to this is that we're very concerned about people. We're always concerned about how healthy are people and so forth, and that's a good thing, because I mean, it's about humanity. But if you take organizations away from humanity, we become primitive beings. The only line between us and an animal world is our ability to keep organizations alive. Every institute that the world has is an organ. Even a marriage is an organization. It's a system where there's resources, there's outputs, there's intent, there's desires. It's an organized system. The word organization means we organize something, and that's something that animals can't do. So we're facing some severe problems here in terms of employment. I think that the ultimate outcome of COVID-19 would be a world split into two types of economies. I think you're going to have a very localized economy, people servicing each other in the community, garden services, cleaning services, the guy who's local, who everybody knows about. That would be the one type of economy, and I think that one is going to be the predominant economy. But then you're going to have monopolies jumping up, and they're all going to be cyber economies. They're not going to have the boundaries of country. I take this podcast of yours, for instance. I'm in South Africa, you're in Malaysia. To get to you would physically, if airports were open, it would take me the best of a day, probably in the vicinity of about 12 to 14 hours to get there. But here we can have this interview, and you can have it with people all over the planet. So I think that the choice eventually is going to be, am I going to become part of the cyber world, which has no boundaries, or am I going to become part of a localized economy, which has very clear boundaries? And I'm not saying the one is better than the other. I'm just saying that this is the split that I'm foreseeing in the future.
Sure, sure. Tarek, in your own opinion, what must businesses do to stay relevant, to survive, to grow in this current time?
Well, you know, from an orgtology perspective, we work with duality, and in any organization you find dual, it's almost like dichotomies. It's two things that look like they oppose each other, but they actually coexisting, you know. And the whole idea is, if you remove one thing, you know, if you can't take away one side of a coin without destroying the entire coin. So, you know, both sides of the coin needs to be there for the coin to exist. So in orgtology, we believe that you know, the word organization means we organize something. What are we organizing? We're organizing activity. So organization is very much our ability to organize activity and then to put resources into that activity. The resources would typically be people, money, and assets. So we have to put this into our activities. And activity can be organized in two ways. It's either repeats a past, so we call it a process. So it repeats yesterday. That's how we create efficiency, because we keep on doing something, and you know, we can keep on changing it with marginal increments until it reaches a point of perfection. So the efficiency of the organization is the one side of the duality. On the other side, we have the effectiveness on the organization. That's the effect, the relevance that it has. And that's the question that you're now asking. You're asking, you know, how can we keep on having an effect on the environment so that they keep on sponsoring us? That would be the definition of relevance. You know, we're still existing because there's a need for us. So for organizations to stay relevant in a very simple way would be, you need to ensure that you negotiate a favorable position for yourself in either a community or either in a cyber world. And, you know, obviously the more you go to the cyber side of things, the more difficult it would be to negotiate a favorable position for yourself. And the more localized you are, the more that would depend on the relationships that you have, the language that you can speak. You know, if I go to Sardinia, which is a small island of Italy, and I try to become a local player there in the economy, it's going to be difficult for simple things like I can't speak Italian. You know, that would be quite an obstacle in terms of trying to become a local person there. So you'd have to be part of a community. So in orgtology, we would say leadership amounts to three things. And, you know, leadership is about keeping people relevant, is about keeping the organization relevant. So the three things that I would put down for that would firstly be understanding. If you ask many gurus on leadership, they would say that the first element of leadership is influence, but I would say no, it's understanding. It's the ability to know what the reality of the situation is. And I think that's one of the big problems in COVID is people don't understand the reality of the situation. I take in my own industry, in the training industry and the consulting industry, most consultants and trainers just sat at home and, you know, they're waiting this thing out so that it would pass. And you know, it's been 3 months down the line now, it's not passing. I don't think it's going to be passed 2 years down the line. So you need to accept that there's a new reality here. The world is changing significantly in many ways. Whether you believe this is a conspiracy or a real thing or whatever the case may be, you know, it doesn't change the fact that the reality of the situation is that the world's changing. So step one is to understand and to clearly understand what your reality is. You know, if you're not going to make it, it's a good time to realize that sooner than later. So the second thing would be innovation, the ability to rethink what you're doing. You know, in my industry, for the first 2 months, it was quiet. But now clients realize their organizations need to continue. They need to stay alive. So we're starting to use Zoom and Microsoft Teams and, you know, that type of thing to get going. And I'm seeing even training institutions, you know, are now starting to do online training. So you need to find innovative ways, firstly, to transform what you're doing as much as possible to a world where proximity, human proximity becomes a problem, because we have to stay far away from each other at this point. You know, the second thing in terms of innovation would be to lift yourself out from the crowd. everybody's going online, everybody's using Zoom, everybody's on doing these things. You need to find a way to stand out from the crowd, you know, and that takes a lot of disruptive thinking. And then lastly, I would say influence, you know, your ability to get people to say yes, your ability to draw people into your presentation of how to deal with this problem, but still present your service. I'm not sure if that's making sense. You know, if you want me to explain more, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. While you were talking, just relating it towards my own personal experience. So it definitely makes sense, Derek. Derek, before the next question, so what are your own thoughts? Is this COVID conspiracy real?
I'm a scientist, Sarah. So you know, we look at evidence, and you know, so the conspiracy theories are very entertaining, but I mean, there's no evidence that Bill Gates would want to, you know, create a one world government. And you know, first of all, this guy's spending his own money, which he made. I mean, it's not like, you know, and he's giving it for vaccines. And then people say, well, you know, he wants to vaccinate the world and put a number of the beast on them. And I mean, that would be nonsensical in any intellectual circle. So I don't make much of any conspiracy theories. I think there's evidence that this is a virus. It's real. There's evidence that this virus spreads at a hell of a speed. In fact, the danger of COVID-19 is because it's not too dangerous. That's what makes it incredibly dangerous. If you take a virus like SARS, for instance, it hit you very quickly, it put you in bed very quickly, we could isolate you very quickly, and it also killed people very quickly. So the virus couldn't spread much before you could curb it. But with something like COVID-19, you could walk around carrying it and not even know it. Most people don't even have any symptoms of that. And the thing is, this thing just cycles. So New Zealand, for instance, had 0 cases. They have cases again. So you know, they're constantly having to suppress this. And my brother lives in New Zealand, so it's quite a clean country when it comes to COVID-19. But the economy is severely hampered. I mean, they can't go out, they can't fly, they can't export things. It's difficult to export things. So I think it's a virus. And if you ask me about governments and so forth, I would say that any entity would aim to negotiate a favorable position for itself in any situation. So if there's a crisis, any country is going to try and get the best of this. Any country is going to try and get on top of this. Any person, any business are going to try and profit from this. So what people are saying, but now look at how much money Facebook's making. So Facebook's part of this conspiracy, but of course they're going to try and make money. I mean, if there's an opportunity to do so, they will. But I really think that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are sitting in their seats, not really knowing what the hell's going on, where this thing's coming from. I mean, I don't think it's made in a lab or anything like that. I mean, it's entertaining, you know, it's nice to listen and talk about these things. But the reality of the situation is that there's more evidence that this is a disease. It's not the first time that humanity has undergone plagues and diseases and epidemics. I mean, just a few years ago, we had a plague which wiped out millions of people. This has been happening quite often, even in the animal kingdom. I mean, I had a budgie cage, and at one point I had 50 budgies, and I just came one morning and there were 40 budgies lying on the ground there. Now, I'm sure if these budgies could think, they would try and pin it on a conspiracy of a budgie who's trying to control everybody. Because, you know, if you blame it on the budgie, then it becomes a budgie thing, then it becomes a controllable thing, then it becomes something that we can manage. And I think that's really the psychological thing of having a conspiracy theory, is that it puts people in charge. Because if it's somebody in China who's orchestrating this evil thing, then at least it's another human, and we can manage other humans. You know, we can take them to court and punish them, and you know, we've got control of the situation. But if it's a bloody virus made by nature, and we don't have an antidote, it's an incredible feeling of despair and helplessness. So the conspiracy theory really helps you to deal with this psychologically. You know, it's a human, so all we have to do is we just have to go and punish China, you know, and then everything's sorted out. But I think it's just the virus, Sarah.
Yeah. And we can have another conversation about Trump and.
yeah. No, they're keeping life interesting. I mean, you know, they really having us at least have some humor through this. I mean, watching Trump is quite always entertaining.
It is,
I
yeah.
wouldn't say it's enlightening, but it's entertaining.
Entertaining is the word. Yeah, let's just stick to that now. Well, thanks for sharing that. Derek, uh, what do you foresee? There's a lot of changes now in terms of job skills and everything. What skills will be most important post-COVID? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a hard answer to give, because the answer is not really very favorable to everybody. And the problem we're facing is that the world of blue collar work is disappearing. We've got, you're going to have two parts of the world. You're going to have a very primitive societies, and you're going to have very advanced societies. I mean, Germany already started with dark factories. You can read about it if you Google, you know, what do they call it? The Industry 4.0 is a German government project that started quite some time back, you know, where the factories are dark because you don't need lights there. There's no humans, you know, they've got drones fixing things. So I think the idea of people doing routine work is really phasing out. We can't compare with, we can't compete with AI when it comes to process-based work. You can't. There's nothing a human can do to, in fact, AI could have better front desk conversations with you than a person can. If I go to the gym, for instance, which, you know, I haven't been doing for months now because of COVID. If I go to the gym, there's a person at the front desk, and that person usually has to check the computer to know my name. You know, they don't really know me. They would say, "Good morning, Mr. Hendrikz," but they have no bloody idea who I am or what I, you know, when I was here the last time. But if that was AI, if that was a robot talking to me, the robot would just look at my eye and pick up my identity through facial recognition and say, "Good morning, Derek," because I like to be called Derek instead of Mr. Hendrikz. And say, "Morning, Derek, how are you?" I would say, "Well, I'm feeling a bit down today." And the system would pick up that the last time they asked me how I was also feeling down, and it was raining, and it's raining again. And it would be able to connect these things and say, "Well, you know, last time you said you were down, it was raining. It's raining again. So maybe the rain has something," you know, so it could have quite a meaningful, pleasant conversation with me because I'll be the total focus, you know. So routine work, I think, is a dangerous place to be. And I think the main skill for any person to thrive in a post-COVID economy, which is going to be very much cyber-physically driven, in other words, artificial intelligence driven, would be the ability to think in the abstract, to be an abstract thinker, innovative thinker, to have new ideas, to rethink things, because that's something a system can't do. You know, systems can't fall in love. AI can't hate. AI can't desire things. That's it's our flaws as humans that makes us unique, because we can constantly, you know, we disrupt processes, and in that disruption, you know, renewal is created and innovation is born. So the innovative person, the person who can rethink things, the first person who can disrupt current processes and make them better, I think that's the person who's going to really thrive in the future. Any person who can help AI do its job, and you know, because we're also entering what people are talking, the fifth industrial revolution, and the fifth industrial revolution would be negotiating, you know, work with systems. That means that instead of systems working for people, you know, there'll be a collaboration between artificial intelligence and people. So I think that what even small businesses have to do now is they have to explore the way of connecting through cyberspace and to let AI help them so that they can in turn help AI, because AI needs humans. You know, AI can't, you know, AI is too perfect. It works in algorithm. So algorithm is a set of rules that creates activity or that directs activity and the sequence thereof. But that's a logical process, you know, to get angry at somebody or to fall in love or to hate somebody. That's not something AI can do. Imperfection. It's a deviation. It's a mutation. And but yet the greatest love songs were written with depressed people. You know, the greatest innovations of our time have been created by people that were somewhat psychologically dysfunctional. I mean, Steve Jobs, everybody knows Steve Jobs, you know, the great founder of Apple and the amazing things that he's done. But he was a bloody difficult person to work with. You know, he parked in disabled parkings, and he shouted at people, and he chased them, he threw them with books. You know, he wasn't really a nice person to work with.
Really?
So human, yeah. Well, most very creative people are difficult people to work with because there's a dysfunction. You know, they operate outside the sphere of normality. I mean, one of the greatest artists was who's the guy whose ear was cut off? Van Gogh. I know the Americans like to say Van Gogh, but it's actually Van Gogh. You know, it's a Dutch pronunciation. So Van Gogh, I mean, this guy cut his ear off and he gave it as a present to a prostitute. That's not normal. You know, we don't do that type of thing. If you do that in school with your girlfriend, they sort of put you in an institute, mental institute. So you're looking at a future which is difficult because the good citizen, the person who can just process this and do routine work, could very easily be replaced by artificial intelligence. And the difficult person, the person who's difficult to manage and deal with, that's the person that we're going to need to constantly push the boundaries of creativity. So it's a very interesting future that we're heading in. I think the ability to do things differently, and this doesn't mean you don't have to be Steve Jobs. You can be a normal person in a village that has a restaurant, and you can decorate that restaurant in a very interesting way. And you can, you know, I've read of this one small restaurant in Sardinia, which I spoke about just now, a small island. And this is just the kitchen of a woman who's been loving to make pastry stuff for hundreds of years. It's in a family, you know, kids make pastry. And she started just opening this for tourists. And I mean, she became incredibly wealthy in her village in terms of that. That was innovative. So I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist or a computer specialist or anything to be relevant. I just think that you need to do something different. People are looking for difference. There's a need for different things. People are getting sick of the McDonald's burger, you know, and getting sick of the mainstream T-shirt that everybody wears. I think uniqueness is going to become an incredibly valuable asset to any human, and it's something you have. We don't look the same. We sound different. We've got different skin colors and tonalities, and I mean, we're born unique. All we have to do is really enhance that we already have.
Can one explore that, Derek? Can one actually adopt that design and creative, innovative thinking?
Yeah, I think that you don't have to go on a course for innovation. You just need to be yourself more. You know, I don't know if you've watched there was a very good movie coming out last year, The Joker. It won an Academy Award. I think the main actor was Phoenix.
Yes.
Joaquin Phoenix. It was a brilliant, I've never seen acting like that in my life. You know, I watched the movie twice and I just thought to myself, the acting is out of this world. I'm not even talking about the story or anything, you know, and I wondered, why does this character of the Joker attract so much audience? People love the Joker. And I think it's because he's of the integrity of the character, because he doesn't pretend to be anybody else. There's no separation. It's not like Batman. You know, Batman has to put on a Batman suit to go and save the world. You know, he doesn't do that with his normal clothes. He has to put on another attire and a mask. So Batman's mask makes him something else. Whereas the Joker and the mask is one thing. There's no separation between the person. There's no point in you trying to understand the person behind the mask when you look at the Joker. That's the same thing. You know, the person with the mask and the person behind the mask is the same thing. And that's why people love the Joker, you know, the uniqueness and the integrity of that uniqueness. He doesn't try and be somebody else. I think in one part of the movie, you know, he writes something down and it says, people always ask you to behave as if you're not. In other words, I am who I am. I'm behaving. You can't be somebody different than who you are. And I think that's the beginning of innovation. You know, it's not about thinking out the box. It's about being you, the way you were born. You know, not trying to, because that's what we do. You know, we put on these masks. We try to be somebody else. We try to be the good corporate citizen. We try to be the good employee, the good spouse, the good whatever. The good whatever the environment wants us to be. And I think that the locus of control innovation has to come from the inside. You have to be more you. And once you become more you, you would start doing more you things. And just that alone would be incredibly innovative, because there's no two people on this planet who, if they tried to be themselves, absolutely themselves, would be alike. They're going to be different. And in that difference, there's an attraction to that. And the attraction for that difference is going to be more. I mean, look at the popularity of Donald Trump. It's ridiculous. I mean, I can't conceive how a person who can't make proper sentences, semantic constructs, can become this popular, and he is. In fact, the power of that man has come to a point where every conversation in the world about politics includes him. You can go to the outskirts of China and people would be either for or against Trump. We've turned the world in a for or against Trump world. It's like your own politics takes second place in this. You're not even talking about your own president and stuff. It's now about, are you for or against Trump? And I really think his uniqueness, his ability to be so different to any other bloody president ever on the planet. From his hairstyle to his look to the way he talks, it's like this guy was constructed in a lab, and that shows the uniqueness. Vladimir Putin. Look at the popular leaders or the talked about leaders around the world. Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, Xi Jinping. What's the North Korean guy that the guy from North Korea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you're talking about, just can't recall his name now.
Yeah. So these guys have distinctive. I mean, they look more weird than pop stars and artists. It's like there's a uniqueness about these. It's almost becoming something else now. Politics. It's not the normal old guy with a gray suit. This is becoming very entertaining and very individualistic and very different. I see the Indian president, he always wears traditional Indian attire. I work a lot in Swaziland. The king and even the ministers there wear Eswatini attire. I think that's where the world's going. It's going to a place where your uniqueness is going to be your main asset. Whether this is a bubbly personality in the office, or whether this is the housewife who helps everybody in the street with their problems. We've gone through a modernist era in the 1800s with the first industrial revolution, where our main aim was to make the same. We wanted a world where people behave in a controllable way and so forth. China's working very hard on this with their social credit system, where they've got cameras all over, and if you smoke in a non-smoking place, and if you jaywalk, your credits drop, and then you can't do certain things in society. But I think that they might be barking up the wrong tree, and we're seeing this because China's struggling with innovation. It's very hard in China. I mean, they literally have to steal things to be in the market. In fact, I've heard that the counterfeited brands, like Nike and Hugo Boss, the t-shirts and shoes and stuff, the market's actually bigger for the counterfeited products than for the real products. So China's making more money out of counterfeit Nike products than Nike is making out of the real Nike products. That's the situation we have. But in the end, if you continue with this, it's not a sustainable model. I mean, somewhere there needs to be somebody who thinks out these ideas, who has a new brainwave. And that doesn't happen in China because of the overregulation of people. So people are turned into robots. But the reality is that robots actually make better robots than people. So turning a person into a robot is a stupid thing, because it would be more efficient and cost effective to turn a robot into a robot. What we need humans for is innovation, disruptive thinking, creativity. We need humans to give great quotes and to do things which are phenomenal, athletic feats. And I think that's going to be worth a lot of money in future, just to be a robotic person who does your job well, the same thing that you did yesterday. I can't see that lasting. It's going to have severe effects. There's different ideas on this, because the population problem we're facing is not only a resource problem, it's also a work problem. What are we going to do with all these people? Where are they going to work? So when we talk about overpopulation, people bring counter arguments in terms of food and how you can feed everybody. that's half the problem. The other half the problem is they've got to do something. They've got to be meaningful. Any entity has to be meaningful in an environment. Otherwise, what's your point? So we're sitting with that. But then Bill Gates comes along and he says, well, if you uplift the health of people, if we make everybody healthy, there is scientific evidence that populations will reduce. In other words, less people will come along. If babies would be made, if there's enough resources for everybody, then people would have less kids. That's his theory. And then you look at it.
Yes, please, Derek.
All right. So so we're moving into a world, like I said, Elon Musk's theory on population is that as AI increases its intelligence and dominance of work, populations will naturally decrease. And so what we're facing in the future is also a declining population. I think that's definitely going to happen in some way or another. People would become less because there would be less for them to do. If the evidence for this is that in the first industrial revolution in the 1800s, with the introduction of steam power and conveyor belts and all that type of thing, that was when populations increased. So the size of humanity has always been driven by work. The more there was a need for people in factories and stuff like that, the more people populated, and the less there's a need for that, the less people will populate. So we're I think the tides have changed, and we're entering a very different world in terms of work. And I think that the schooling system might also change quite dramatically, because what would happen in schools is kids would be given more freedom of creativity, of boundless thinking, because that's really where we're going. That would be the point of humanity. Don't underestimate the evolution of artificial intelligence. I think that this is what people don't see. And if I had to go back 4,000 years when all this started, when the whole conscious idea of organizing things in a conscious way began with agriculture, that was 4,500 years ago, when we stopped being hunters and gatherers and we started farming. Farming is the first thing of organization, but less than 1% of intelligence was controlled by systems at that point. The greatest system you would have was a guy and a plow and an ox. That's a process, that's a system. But that system was controlled by humans. So a human decided left or right. It wasn't the system's decision. Then we started with the first industrial revolution in the 1800s, and that amount of systems intelligence increased from less than 1% to about 30%. So 30% of an organization could be run without human intervention. Then we had a second and a third industrial revolution, dealing with things like electricity and nuclear power and the information age. And it increased to about 45%. So at that point, now today, we're at a point where 65% of the average organization can be run without any human intervention. In other words, you don't need people to do anything. I mean, you put a video on Facebook that has violent content, within seconds, a message comes back saying that you can't post your video. It's got violent content. There's not a person looking at that. It's an algorithm. So we're now at a point, for the first time in the history of mankind, where systems control more of the organization than humans. The only purpose of a human in an organization is to think about the future. As I began with orgtology, it works with two things. It works with repeating the past, which is your efficiency, and it works with controlling the future, which is your effectiveness. In other words, strategy, projects, that type of thing that takes you into the future. That's where humans play a huge role, because a system, it's unlikely that a system will ever have the ability to anticipate a future. So strategy would always be an abstract thing. I think it's as difficult for a system to be creative as it is for a human to think like, at the speed at which a system thinks. So we're entering a very interesting future in terms of systems intelligence evolving. I don't have scientific support for this, but I've read a number of articles where there's speculation that as systems intelligence is increasing, human intelligence is decreasing. We've actually picked up that people are not becoming more intelligent. They're actually they're stupidifying. If you take the youth of today, you take their cell phones away, they can't function. In other words, they're already plugged into an AI system, and they're already not able to function outside that AI system. If you take a cell phone away from a child, it's like killing them for those hours. They don't know what to do. You know, I mean, we used to travel with map books on our seats. We had a book with maps, you know, and I would have my finger on the one side and my eye on the road on the other side, and that's how I found places. We knew where north and south and east and west is. You know, we actually really chatted up girls when I was young. You know, we would go to a pub or someplace and really talk to a girl, you know, standing next to her. Even that's disappearing now.
Drastically changed. Yeah.
Yeah, I've read that in Japan, people find cyber relationships more satisfying than actual relationships. So people would rather date somebody and do what we're doing here, you know, talking on a screen, and that's more exciting than the real thing. So we're already there, Sarah.
Yeah,
we're not going there. We're already there.
And there are life goals for that as well.
We're in an AI system. We're already plugged into an AI system. It's not something that's going to happen. It's happened.
Definitely. Going back in your Joker story just now, I remember us having this conversation where you felt very strongly about the character. But the issue now would be, yeah, it's true. Some of us are comfortable with being ourselves, our unique self, bringing it out into the public. Some of us are not. Unfortunately, there are many of us living in still a very guarded community. So what would your advice be, you know, just moving to move forward into this next normal? How would one need to bring themselves?
Yeah, that's the golden question, and you know, the problem begins with cultures trying to, you know, endorse their own idea of reality on other cultures. You know, I for instance heard a lot of people complaining about women in Saudi Arabia, but I've been to Saudi Arabia many times, and I've spoken to women there, and a lot of them were really quite happy. You know, enjoyed the environment and the world that Saudi presents to them. But the unhappy people are mostly in America. So that's the first problem, you know, is whose reality is a good reality. The second thing is that if you do find yourself in a position where you want to be something else, but there's a culture or a religion or anything that bounds you not to be that, then obviously the best advice would be not to, you know, to find a new reality. I think that's step one, you know, is you need to find a place where you can be you in the most comfortable way possible. It shouldn't be illegal to be you. You know, if you're for instance have a sexual preference that's not allowed in the country, then it would be better to go to a place where it is allowed, because that would take away that stress. So that would be the simple answer. Is to position yourself in a place where you can be you. I think it's simple as that. You
take charge. You have to take charge of your own future.
You have to make a choice, Sarah. You have to decide, am I going to be me, or am I going to be a secret me in a society that doesn't allow me? You know, that, and to change a society is a big thing. But if that's you, if that's your role, if you feel that's your purpose to change a society, then do that. I mean, there's people like Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King who became almost demigods in just being them and not being happy with the environment and fighting that, you know. Then that's the choice they made. But another choice would be to just go to a place where you can be you, where you can, you know, if you're not allowed to read in your community, then go to, and you like reading, go to a community where you can read. I know it sounds, you know, it's probably easier said than done. So, you know, just moving out of a community is not that easy. But
one would, yeah, it takes a lot of courage.
Sarah, but if you visualize a reality for yourself, and you consciously decide, because any change begins with a decision. That's the difference between change and transformation. Change is a decision. It's a clarity in your consciousness that you do not accept the situation and you're going to move to a new one. That's change. That the change already happened at that point. The transformation is a mechanical, mathematical process of executing that desire. So that's back to orgtology. I mean, in orgtology, we separate purpose from intent. So the first thing, the change happens with acknowledgement of a purpose and a very clearly defined intent to say, well, I am, let's take a stupid example. Let's say I'm a person who loves to read. You can see my books at the back here. So reading is a big thing for me. If I had to be in a community where I couldn't read and my purpose was to get knowledge, I would have to manifest this purpose. So I would have to create an intent of, and this intent would be to be at a place where I can read. I'm using a stupid example now. So the transformation process would be my plan, would be the execution of that project, would be, you know, having timelines and due dates and resources allocated. Once you start on that road, it's very hard to stop any human being. I've seen people get out of situations, but it begins with a very clear decision. You know, I talk a lot, and I'm not, I know time's limited here, but there's a very good story in South Africa of a lady. It's many years back. I'm really talking about probably about 25 years ago. I don't know, but she was abducted by a satanic cult here in, I think it was in the Cape somewhere, and it was two men, and they took her to a bush, and then they raped her, and she was, I can't remember if she was pregnant. You know, these stories tend to add over time, so I'm going to try and stick to the facts. But they cut her throat. They slit her throat with a knife. They raped her, slit her throat, and then they also cut her stomach open. And apparently she literally put her hand on her throat, and she put her hand on the stomach, and she crawled. She basically crawled to the road. And, you know, by luck, after a few hours, somebody found her there, and she actually survived this. But when they talk to her, you can hear that the survival was in the decision not to die. That was a very clear, loud decision in her head. She said, I'm going to make this. I'm not going to die here. And you know, that began a transformation process. That began her to think about things that make sense. Like, well, if I want to live, I need to stop the bleeding. That's a sensible thing to do. So she puts her one hand on her stomach because it's bleeding there, and another, you know, so that decision to be alive, I'm using, you would say this is almost natural, but you can translate that same learning to any small, medium enterprise in trouble, or to any person in a community who's not happy with what the community does. It begins with a very clear, articulated decision in your head. I'm going to go to this route. So I think that's the beginning of innovation and change. That's the beginning of becoming you, you know, to the decision to be you.
Yeah, definitely. There is a will, there is a way, always. Derek, last but not least, prior to the MCO, whenever I'm calling you, you're always here and there. You're in Swaziland, you're in Tanzania, you're in Kenya, always traveling. Now, you are completely working from home during the MCO. How are you adapting to the drastic change?
Yeah, it's been difficult, Sarah. We've lost, you know, I mean, my world already smashed in February, because in February I could already not get on an airport. And, you know, all the years I've worked outside South Africa, so I've never been working in my own country. And I've always been working in the East, or in the, you know, in other African countries. You know, for a number of reasons, I made that, and it was an interesting choice because I've seen so much. Thanks to you, you know, largely. I mean, I've seen so many countries and so many cultures, and I've eaten so many different foods. So it's been amazing, all the travel. You know, I think I've got 9. In South Africa, we've got a thing called a maxi passport. That's a very thick. It's about double the size of a normal passport. So I've got 9 of those fully stamped. So it's been a privilege. But the world's changed. I don't think that's going to come back soon. And, you know, I'm also getting older, so I'm enjoying this working from home. But we've been without income from February to June, you know, nothing coming in. Businesses were just waiting this out.
Okay, Derek, so thanks for sharing those valuable insights earlier. Last but not least, Derek, prior to the MCO, you're always traveling. Whenever I call you, you're either in Swaziland or Tanzania or Kenya or Saudi. Now, you're completely working from home, yeah? So how are you adapting to the drastic change?
Yeah, Sarah, it's been difficult. I think it's difficult for many people. Since February, I didn't work basically because the airport's already closed in February. So, we couldn't do any work from then because I have to travel, and all my work was outside South Africa. So I didn't have much clients here. So that caused a lot of problems. We only started running again last month in June. And that was mainly because I think the companies are now realizing that they have to continue. Our organizations have to keep on going. So we're doing a lot of online consulting now. It's going very well. I've basically shifted my entire, I've shifted all my work to do online. So even the training, we're putting the training on platforms. We consulting people online. I even have training sessions where we do it like this. I train people over a period online. And I think that world is going to evolve quite a bit. I think we're going to be stuck there for quite a long time. And I would advise anybody in the services industry of consulting or training to sort of go this route. It's unlikely that international travel will open up again. Definitely not within 18 months. It could even be longer. So on the one side, I think that it's been terrible, but on the other side, we've become very creative. I've seen people becoming so creative. We had a gym down the road, and there was this guy was Mr. South Africa, so his whole life is in the gym, and even he's doing online stuff now. So people are logging in the afternoons, and he's got sessions with them. And so we're getting very creative. If I look at the amount of ideas I've gotten, and the whole orgtology workshop that we're presenting for people who want to become orgtologists, that's online now, and it's a new world, and I think there's a lot of opportunities. We need to adapt.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So overall, for you, this COVID pandemic, good or bad?
I didn't hear that last part, Sarah. You said the COVID pandemic?
This COVID pandemic for you overall, is it good or bad?
It's difficult to say because good and bad is a perception by the observer. It's good and bad. I think the person who put this the best was an author by the name of Charles Addams. You might know him from the book that he wrote, The Addams Family, which also became a popular TV series. Now, there's a quote of Charles Addams which explains this very well. He says, "What's chaos for the fly is normal for the spider." So I think what's going to happen in COVID-19 is a lot of people are going to suffer and a lot of people are going to flourish. And it might be a very good time very early on as this pandemic and its consequence unfolds, to make the decision that you're going to be one of the people who flourish. Because once you make that decision, you'll start looking for options and opportunities. I think COVID-19, any crisis always presents a lot of opportunities. We saw this after the world wars. The baby boomers that came after the Second World War and had immense economic benefit from that, because everything was new and it's almost like the reset. And this is what COVID does. It pushes the reset button on economies. So, I'm currently working with a consulting project with the Eswatini Airway Company. In other words, the air carrier, their national carrier. They're a very small airline, and they haven't really been able to compete in the world. But now with COVID-19, all the big airlines have gone bankrupt, which makes this little airline a very valuable place, and it has very little debt and very little overheads. So it has an opportunity now to compete against people like Emirates and huge airlines, Virgin Atlantic, British Airways. These guys are now where small airlines are. So it gives a lot of opportunities for small businesses to enter the international arena, to go into the international market. We're seeing incredibly interesting things happening. I'm thinking of this podcast that you're having with me now. There was a guy, I think 3-4 years ago, who started podcasting called Joe Rogan. And his podcast was apparently sold this year for $100 million US. That's a lot of money. And he did this in COVID. So there's a lot of billionaires and millionaires that's going to be born out of this. There's a lot of new innovations that's going to come out of this. There's a lot of rethinking of things. Artificial intelligence is going to be pushed to its limits. If we get a vaccine for COVID-19, it would be the fastest that humanity has ever gotten a vaccine for any disease in the history of mankind. So, to say it's all bad would be wrong. To say it's all good would be terrible, because people are losing lives and losing income and losing, way of living. So it's hard to say whether it's good or bad. It will unfold, and there will be good things and there will be bad things. There would be new things. I think it's unlikely that we're going to wake up one day and the world will just go on as it was. I think that will not happen. But this is your chance, this is everybody's chance to do something unique. I think the more unique you are now, the more you'll be out there. This goes from small vendors, home businesses to huge businesses. There's huge opportunities here, but there's also a lot of suffering here. So it's good and bad. I'm not sure if that was the answer you're looking for, but that's the best one I can give at this.
What you just mentioned just now, small businesses may have a chance to flourish flourish a lot. There is that chance to compete with international. That you have no idea how much that means to me, and I'm sure to a lot of our viewers as well. So
yes.
Eric, thank you very much for today. We really appreciate. Might actually look forward to work with you again. So Asia.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, be ready. Be ready to hear more of Derek. We're going to have part 2, part 3. We're going to have Derek's beautiful orgtology programs and all its subs introduced to us very soon. So look out for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been great. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.